Hello, everyone. All right. So this is me in 2021. Kids. I had never been in a game company, and I had no connections in the game industry and no experience. Not at all. I was a rock star from 2004. Then I became a plumber, to shut down my ego. And then I became a drama student, and I learned to do all the classical trained theater acting, including Shakespeare and Chekhov. And over there, I'm Teen Angel in Greece. Then I became a musical director of a gypsy band. And then you cannot see it, but I was also a teacher back in Iceland. Then I became a producer-director, and I won lots of awards for everything except gaming. And then I traveled the world, and I was on a helicopter in Greenland, which was terrifying. and basically, I went from Santa Claus to CEO, because that's a very well-paid acting job in Iceland. And in Iceland, we have 13 Santa Clauses, so this is very serious business. There's not just one red Santa Claus, they all have names, all designed to absolutely terrify children into submission. And over there, I'm working as Santa Claus. That's in December 2021. I had my first showcase for the game in 2022. And 3 years later, I was having lunch with the creator of Tetris, which I thought was the coolest way to explain the exponential growth of the story. And now my game has an up-and-coming community as of May 2025 with, 2,500 people or something. So I'm going to tell you all about that and how I figured stuff out, because building a gaming company has no science. You can read books, of course. That's sad, but in the end, it's very human, and there's no manual. So I will explain what I found out, and I've thought a lot about this. So I started Vitar Games, and Vitar means in Icelandic lighthouses in plural, because we have a lot of lighthouses in Iceland because we're an island in the North Atlantic, surrounded by the North Atlantic. So we have a lot of lighthouses, and I'm also a big fan of lighthouses. And they mean a lot. They mean safe harbor. They are a beacon guiding the light. So I thought that would be cool. But it's also a play of words, because in Icelandic, if you turn it into ofviti instead of witty, it sounds like you're eccentric. So it had a lot of funny things, and it kind of translates okay overseas. So people can call it Vitar Games, Vitar Games. It's up to you. It's all open. And that's one on the photo. That's Reykjanesviti, one of my favorite lighthouses in Iceland. And this is what I began building in 2021. This is the first concept art for my game called Dig In. And I will tell you all about the game as we go along. So, the story of your idea. And essentially, what I found out is that pitch decks have their use, of course. But I found out that storytelling was a much better way to explain your vision, explain the company, and what you were intending to do with the money from investors. So on the photo on the left, it says PowerPoint was invented in 1987, but we've been telling stories for probably much more than 36,000 years. And that felt much more natural to me. I do pitch decks, of course, but storytelling is something I really enjoy. And that's kind of like essentially the story of your idea is how I got here. And what is an idea? Does anyone in the audience have an idea for a game? Come on, all of you have one, right? Of course, we like games, right? Everyone has an idea for a game. And that's the first step, but some people say that ideas are cheap. And we don't even know what an idea is, really. We cannot even prove that thoughts and ideas are actually made of atoms. They could be from like a different dimension or something. We have no idea. So how do you turn something like an idea, which is something you cannot touch, you cannot see, into something you can touch and see? And through my years of pitching and meeting all the investors and the VCs and publishers, this is kind of, in my opinion, how I understand this whole thing. This is the most simple way, in my opinion, to explain this. So now, who had an idea? What, did you give up on your idea? All right, so we have an idea. That's the starting point. And this is very holistic, but ideas, they come in pictures and impression. Like when you share an idea, like I learned in acting, if you're going on stage and your character is really cold, you're supposed to convey that to the audience without being, it's supposed to be here, right? The impressions of being cold, it's dark. That's kind of where the acting bit comes into it. And ideas and thoughts, essentially, they just flow. And I always think water is a really good way to explain. They flow like water, and water is the essence of life. And what makes us all happy is ideas. And we all watch films, right? We all watch TV. We are in the entertainment industry, and all of this comes somewhere from usually very subtle, humble origins. And that's the idea. But the idea is good. But if you're going to transform it into a viable business proposition, there are two forces of nature which must come together. And I like to use the word nature, water. It's like the best way for me to understand this. And now we have the idea, which is something we cannot see, we cannot touch. And what's the opposite of that? That is the physical world. And let's now talk about this approach. This is the intangible, what we cannot touch, the idea. And the opposite, the or not the nemesis, but the absolute alternative to the idea, the intangible, is of course the tangible. And everything in this room, we can see each other, we're all tangible. We're all here in this physical space, right? We're all made out of atoms. We're all here, we're all present right now. So how do we get the intangible and the tangible together? And it's like, do you want to see a magic trick? So I have this liquid here. This is essentially water, it's tea. I could hold it, right? I can put it in the palm of my hand, but it's all going to go on the floor, and the people here are going to be upset with me, right? So what can I do with it? I combine the intangible with the tangible. And that's essentially what I figured out, in my opinion, is the missing link between the investors and the idea people. And the tangible. You have an idea, right? It's there, but how do we let everyone else see it and understand it and feel it like we do? Well, that's where the work begins, and a lot of people with great ideas give up. And what I did in 2021, I did a market thesis. And I mean deep dive. I read thousands and thousands of comments on YouTube, Steam, Reddit, everywhere. And then I started doing my planning in the eventuality this would work out and investors or publishers would buy into my idea, and then how I was going to execute it. And this is essentially what I did when I poured the tea into the cup. That's where I married the intangible to the tangible. I actually have this. And I did not invent this. The tangible, which is the cup, has its advantages, but it is the intangible that makes it useful. So imagine if you're an investor and you own 10 billion cups, you could do something with them, right? You could pile them into a pyramid or collect them or have a museum of cups. But essentially what will make them all very useful is the idea that someone has to drink from them, right? And I did not invent this. I actually found this in the Book of Tao. It's old Chinese ancient religion. And I was just like, this was the first time ever it clicked to me of what exactly it is that we do if we're founding gaming companies, getting investment. And that's the beauty of these two powers meeting. And suddenly, things move on. And yes, how do we connect these two? Like I said, everyone has an idea, right? So we have to ask questions. And what I learned in art school and drama school is that the foundation of everything is curiosity. And if you're going to build a gaming company, you have to be very curious about everything. And obviously, who's going to want to play your game? Well, I want to play the game. You probably want to play your game idea, right? Maybe your friends, maybe your grandma. But how can you prove it? Because you have to ask, why would anyone want to play the game? We have 300 games being released on Steam each week this year. That's competition, right? So how can we prove to someone that someone wants to play the game? And how many might these people be? And even where do they live? What do we know about this audience? And I spent a lot of time of finding, because I'm doing like a World War I game, so I was thinking like, how the hell do I prove that someone wants to play a niche game like that? And I did the work. I used Steam Spy. I did the market thesis. I checked every forum. In one of my old pitch decks, I went through 3,640 comments on YouTube, and I took down all the ones that said they want the game like mine. And that was just the beginning, but there was still a lot of work left to do. So what I did, I became the expert in my game. Nobody knows more about my game, my market, my plans, my go-to-market strategy. Nobody knows more than I am. And that's essentially who you need to be when you take that first meeting. You are the leading expert in the world on exactly your idea or your video games. And even today, I still sometimes mess this up of defining my game, because if you're doing this, you're so much in the trenches of building your game, you just assume everyone knows everything as much about it or as passionate about it as you are. And, well, that is the job description. That your job is to make people as passionate and into the game as possible. And then that means you need to know what you're peddling. What are you selling? Imagine if you were selling something else like cosmetics or a car. You need to know everything about the product. An absolute expert. Genre and platform. I sometimes, even today, do pitches and I forget to mention, oh, it's for PC and it's for this. It's very important what kind of game it is. Where are people going to play it? What platforms? This changes everything for investors and publishers, because they have probably been involved with a lot of projects which have been sold on the market. And the next thing, in a market which is so big, so many titles, what makes your game unique? And how can we think, okay, this is something people might notice. People would think, this is interesting. I want to play this. What makes your game stand out? And in our case, we did the niche audience, World War I, underserved market. Everyone's doing World War II. Simple reason, World War II is romantic. It's the whole world saving civilization from the Nazis. World War I, absolute shit show. No good guys, no bad guys. It's like watching a four-year-long Tom and Jerry episode, essentially. So how do you make that into a commercial product that people will like to watch, right? It's not simple, but if you have the passion for it and you figure out if there is a market and people want to play it, and that's what I did. I found a video on Total War Napoleon, and this video was made in like 2015 or something, and there was a guy streaming a mod from Steam Workshop that somebody modded Total War for World War I. And it had millions of views, and the comments were just essentially like my pitch deck. Why is nobody making this game? Why doesn't anyone do games with trench building? Why doesn't anyone do this? And then I just said, and my investors started to think, okay, maybe he's onto something. And then was the next question, what's the scope of this project, Baldwin? What's going to happen in the game? Are there going to be missions? Is it sandbox? Is it this? And this is something I designed and prepared even before I had other people in the company. And I did the work, like thinking, okay, what are people looking for in these kind of games? And like one thing a lot of these people want to see is story-driven campaign missions, which I'm not doing. And I have a good reason for that. And then the investors are, okay. And the scope is like you're going to do the whole world war. I'm like, yes, I'm going to do the Western and Eastern Front, then we'll do the rest in other packages post-release of DLC. And suddenly I had a big content plan going years in the future. And lastly, but not least, the most useful thing I found out was like, okay, I'm making this game. What other games are similar to mine? And there are plenty. And then I did the comparison. I used Steam Spy, Steam database, all kinds of things to figure out if they sold, did they sell well, what was the pattern of sales, when did it blow off. And I started to seeing a really simple pattern in these kind of niche games on Steam and how they found success. And these are actually like 3-4-year-old slides I just bring to this presentation because I think they're cute. So this is me, a lone crazy person, Santa Claus doing my market thesis. And I figured out that all these games had a few things. All of them had quite unique themes. They were all in early access, which means lower price point. Most of them had mod support from very early on, and they had either strategy and simulation, and they were single player. They were not big bananas multiplayer open worlds or anything. They were single player, and they were selling really well for very reasonable budgets. And I basically took these 5 points and I started collecting games that fitted it. And look at this beautiful game, Timberborn. Has anyone played it? Yeah. Essentially, all the humans are gone, and all is left are these very industrious, ambitious beavers that start rebuilding civilization. Most people are like, yep, that's a unique theme. Yep, it has a lot of stuff I enjoy doing in games. It did not have mod support, but the community figured it out, and it has strategy, simulation, single player. And this is 3 years ago. They have probably sold close to 1 million now. My spirit game, RimWorld, same thing, unique, in outer space, but still with a Wild West vibe. And they had early access and mod support, and they basically long tail, beautiful stuff. And lastly but not least, Prison Architect, same thing, fitted everything. Imagine like trying to pitch someone, oh, we're doing a builder game. Oh, is it like SimCity? No, you're building a prison. And like most people hear that pitch, they're like, what? But essentially, this one is golden, has sold way more now than 5.2 million. And as I started collecting all this data, giving this market thesis to investors, it was going well. But even though I had the tangible and intangible, there was still a lot of stuff I still needed to do. Because I had figured out the why, which is the intangible, the passion, the reason why I was doing this. And I had figured out how I was going to do it and for whom. But still, I needed to do a lot more work until we would get investment into a gaming company with no gaming experience. And that's essentially the event horizon. The point of no return. And it was not easy to find people to join me because, like, people said, it was great story, man, interesting game, but like, this is probably never going to work out. It's so difficult. So imagine trying to find qualified people to lead the technical side of a game like this, and you don't have any money. And these people usually have families. So I'd gone this far, a lot of interest, but still too risky because I didn't have anyone to support me on the journey. So at that point, in December 2021, while I was still doing Santa Claus for the kids, scaring the shit out of them, I decided I just have to figure this out. And I just sat down. I said, there's no turning back. I just have to figure it out. So what I did, I bought a computer and started programming the game on my own, which is absolutely batshit crazy if you think about it, because they did not teach any programming in the acting school. And I just started digging my own little hole. And I began. I don't know if we have time for videos, but this is a short one. Do you want to see it? This is just me building the game for 50 seconds. No, it's not. All right. Nope. I realized I just put a screenshot of the video because I thought I won't have time to play it. But I can send you the link after the gig. But in this video, I just went through all the hardship of going into Unreal Engine. I got a lot of support from Epic Games, and I just started. I just started to build, and it was an absolute mess. But I showed it to people about 4 months in, and I did even a public performance of the build, and it doesn't look like the game looks like today, but it showed the vision, the vibe, and the spirit of the game. So suddenly, I had proof of concept, and de-risking had reached the point that my co-founder, which is actually a very talented programmer, had worked for 12 years in the industry. He was like, he said when he saw the prototype, he was so shocked because a lot of people had come to him and asked him to join a company, but nobody has ever been stupid enough to build the prototype on my own. And suddenly all the investors were like, you did that? And I was like, yes. Anyone in programming, it never built. I just pressed play in Unreal, but it worked, and it worked like a charm. And suddenly everything started lining, network building up, prototype, people were super impressed. I had the co-founder, and that leads to the next step in the journey, is to follow and build up on the interest. And that's kind of where this speech is leading, is to that a lot of people ask me about this. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. But the best way to understand something brand new, like the business world and venture world, is to learn about what people get wrong about it. And there's, of course, a lot of misconceptions about venture funding, angels, all this stuff. And I'm going to go through like the most typical misconceptions. Many people think that when the investor has said, okay, let's do it, it just implies that they just wire the money. And it's like you finished the first world in the game and you're just saying goodbye to the wizard and thank you, and the investor is like, good luck, see you at the finishing line. No. Essentially, when you have an investor or venture capital firm, you're basically getting married. This is like somewhere between 5 to 7 year old marriage, because venture funds, they have lifetime, they raise funds for their own fund, and then they start deploying capital. And that only is for a few years, and then they have to close it and start the next one. So this is a relationship. And that's a good investor, because a good investor is the one that follows you from signing the term sheet until the end, for better or worse. Also, a lot of people get wrong about this, is that we don't have to jump on anyone that shows us interest. You should also be evaluating the investor like the investor evaluates you, because that evens out the field. If we're just going to go for everyone, and I'm telling you, 7 to 8 year old relationship, yeah, that might not work out. So always evaluate for yourself, because you're putting a lot of skin into this game, right? You're putting in a lot of effort, and this should be also on your terms. And also what I found very important, as you build up the network and relationship with investors, if you want value from them, then you have to give back. Essentially, you have to make yourself useful. And trust me, if you bring someone value, they will give you value back. And that leads to the second thing of like now having proved proof of concept, there is a market, crazy enough to even prototype the game my own. That's called de-risking, because the investor, if they do decide to fund the company, that's it. As soon as they wire the money, basically there's nothing they can do, nothing really, unless you get into prison or something. That's why they have to de-risk. And a really great founder once told me, just think about it like a video game. It's called the yes and no game. Even though the investor likes you a lot and is very supportive, their job is to find a way to say no, because they are responsible for this money to their investors. And that's also a relationship we have to be really respectful of. So de-risking is very important. And there are simple ways to do that, because they call themselves venture capital after all, with a big V in it, and they know the risk, right? But let's help them out. So best way to start de-risking is by expanding your network, meeting lots of people, getting lots of feedback, even validation. And many great developers do great games, but they don't develop the business as well. And that's a problem, especially in our landscape where there are lots of great titles coming out, and many of them just, unfortunately, don't stay above the wave and float down and get lost, which is a tragedy. And like I did with my co-founder, attract talent. If people are willing to leave their potentially much better paid jobs to join your crazy venture, that's a very strong sign of saying, okay, we are de-risking. Letters of intent and validation, gold. This is the gaming industry. Most people want to help everyone out. Attract talent, prototype, send video updates, find people that know stuff like advisors, get them on board, get them to help you. Because if there's a leak in that ship, and if they think the ship is going to sink, they will find out. So this is your job. De-risk, manage expectations. The why, the idea, the who, the market, and the how, the tangible. And then, like I said at the beginning, pitch decks are great. Do them diligently. Explain as simple as possible why you're doing this, who is it for, and how the hell you're going to do it. Get a designer, someone to help you. Make every slide pop and keep it, less is more. And compare your games to similar games. And this is what is also interesting, because then people might hopefully avoid trying to make games which there are many and the market is saturated with, which will help you become more unique and niche. And how much you need to make the game, only what you need. This is nature, remember, we only take what we need. And any number in that pitch deck, you have to be able to back it up. You cannot just say million this or million that. It has to have a source. And then you have the meetings. And that's why I found, I think, success, because I did my story, and usually, I don't have time to do it today, but usually during my pitches, I mentioned the game on minute 8. And I was still just telling the story, and that's how I felt was the right way to do it. Doesn't work for everyone, but it worked for me. Preparation, investors, publishers, what games are in their portfolio? Are they investing? Are they publishing games? And yes, listen. You can see now I've been talking for like 30 minutes, and I talk a lot, but for every word that leaves the tip of my tongue, I owe 100 to listen. And if you keep it that simple, because it's very common that people get asked questions in these meetings and they never answer them because they're so passionate and in their own project. And lastly but least, decide on achievable short-term goals for meetings. And essentially, the first meeting, what should be the goal of the first meeting? To get the second meeting. Simple, short goals. Yeah, that's it. And then post-pitch, follow-up, pace yourself. Remember, you are the hottest girl on the dance. Don't get desperate. Regular touchdowns. Find meaningful ways to do so. Don't ask them about the weather. Tell them what you've been doing. Constant progress is the best way to de-risk for anyone. If it's constant, that's great. And then learn to spot opportunities to grow the relationship, and again, listen. I think we're almost out of time. And the do's and don'ts. A lot of those. But the main one I learned is to listen more than I talk. And ego might get you somewhere, but you will never be happy. So I think I think we've reached the end of the line. If you'd like to connect with Vitar Games and the company, you can use the QR code, or you can check with me for LinkedIn. So I think we're in Q&A.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Baldwin, for your insights. Yeah, let's clap.
Thank you.
And we're going to questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand so James can see you. Yeah.
Could I just see the last slide again?
Okay.
About this slide, it says, don't answer their questions. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that essentially they should not be asking the question. You should have done the preparation. It's almost like filling in the blanks before they ask. That's a beautiful way to do any kind of business. Because if you cannot answer, if you have to start answering their questions about everything, that means that you still have work to do.
So about your
work? Like, do you mostly focus on the business development side, or do you have time to do some development?
I
or need to do development?
I do game design as well, but I do I have a lot of hats. I even do the music, the sound design. I'm the janitor. I buy the drinks, everything, and I do the business development. So it's a lot, but I kind of like it, which is a problem.
Any more?
When you start out, do you go from your idea and then try to justify it, or do you do the research first a little bit and then come up with your idea afterwards?
I did the research first because I thought it was so bananas and niche that I would have to have something to build on to build a relationship. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.